This is Ron Wojciechowski for Real Estate in a Nutshell, and I have with me today a good friend, business owner, entrepreneur, Rick Nayar. Welcome to the show, Rick.
Thank you, sir.
So you have a whole multitude of things that you have done in the real estate space. And if you were to walk back the last 5 or 10 things that you've done in the space, and you could just rattle them off in the next minute or so, well, just tell us what your background is.
Background is everything from owning a real estate brokerage, running a real estate hedge fund where we look for undeveloped real estate assets, owning a few title companies, insurance agencies, CPA practice. Those are highlight of what we've done.
Okay, absolutely an entrepreneur at its heart and really learning based. And in this industry, I think right now, with things changing as much as they are, that learning curve for all of us is it getting harder?
You know what? I think it's always getting harder. It's always getting harder to keep up with whatever's changing, what's going on in the market. You're always battling a few things. You're battling newer technology. You're battling competition, and you're just battling keeping up with market conditions. I think you're always battling a few things.
So, what's the hardest thing right now to keep up with?
Market conditions and understanding what's going on in the market. And I think to be honest with you, we talk about this a lot. It's actually not hard to do. It's because the truth is you should be able to pull the trigger on making the cuts and cutting your staff down where you need to, cutting your costs down where you need to. The hard part is actually doing it. I think that's what this is about right now. I think the market's shifting, market's changed, and a lot of businesses need to adapt and they need to make the decisions that they have to do. And that right there is the hardest thing to do.
You know, right now, I heard a good friend of mine the other day mention that surviving this time is not the goal. It's thriving in this time. And his words were, it's like fixing an airplane while it's still in the air.
It's a good analogy because, I mean, look, you and me always talk about going to where the puck is going to go. And it feels like we've been doing that for a while, but it feels like something changed a little bit. And, you know, we still need we still want to thrive, but at the end of the day, I think what we're trying to do in this environment is trying to make sure we're not overstaffing. I think it's the biggest thing we're trying to hold to.
So in the past, we've had this ability, at least amongst ourselves, to maybe see around corners from time to time. You still good at that?
I like to think. I'm as good as I can be at that. You know, we kind of started making cuts before most did. We kind of started seeing kind of where the industry's going. You know, a lot of industries I'm in, insurance, title, are very old school, meaning they still mainly run programs on Windows software. Like I can't even run a Mac on half the stuff for both those industries. My point being, they're very antiquated, which helps me because it allows me to realize they're not really updating with the times too much. But I'm able to see to a certain degree, you know, until the next person comes out with something that is groundbreaking. Yes.
So I'm aware of some trouble points in these businesses that you've seen over the last year. So I may know how you're going to answer this.
Sure.
But in title, there were a lot more of something in the last year or two in title than probably ever before.
Well, titles had a lot of situations regarding fraud, regarding, you know, unfortunately, what a lot of crooks realized was that title companies are run by people that maybe not necessarily have a legal background. You know, in fact, most title companies don't have lawyers there. Bottom line is, there a lot of money exchanges hands at these title companies. And a lot of times there's not enough checks and balances in place. And so crooks figured that out years ago, and they realized there are 2 points. There's a point where the seller's getting money from proceeds, and there's a point where buyer's sending money into the title company. And they found a way to intercept those emails and pretend to be the people involved and send out false emails to send the money to people. And so there's been a lot of fraud in that area, and just something we've had to combat.
So that has been a big piece. And with the lower grade of technology is how I'm going to phrase it right now. It's as simple as, hey, click here to see this information about your closing, and maybe the email's gotten hacked. Then what happens?
Well, that's exactly what happens. Title companies are required now to all have secure email. So our email is securitized. And believe it or not, securitizing your email is not hard. It's actually free. Every email provider allows you to do something called 2FA, which allows you to hit a button and require a text message to log in every time you're on a new device. And so what's happened is the people around us in the title industry aren't required to do it. And a lot of times some of them can't do it because to do that may not allow maybe their email marketing software to work. So it's caused a situation where the people around us are getting hacked, be it realtors, be it and it could even be a lender, realtors, lenders, just people involved in the industry. They're getting hacked, and it's causing situations. I'll tell you, the other thing that happened during COVID was because foreign nationals weren't allowed to come here. We started seeing a lot of fraudulent transactions where foreign nationals were being impersonated, and unfortunately, a lot. We were blessed enough in our industries that we saw other people make mistakes with it, and we were able to kind of change policies pretty quick. But a lot of foreign nationals were pretending. Some people were pretending to be foreign nationals because they couldn't come here. They had passports that were like them, and they were able to fraudulently sell stuff that really wasn't.
So now you said 2FA. So just for anyone who doesn't know what 2FA is, 2FA.
Two-factor authentication, and what that basically means is you have the ability of verifying it's really your email by two ways: by either them sending you a text or sending you or you actually connecting your email to a authenticator app, which is the way I recommend you do it. And imagine you go to an app, it's free. Google has this called Google Authenticator, and it has a code that changes, a 6-digit code that changes every 30 seconds or every minute per se. That's everybody out there, guys. You should be doing this kind of thing with all your emails, your Facebook. Everybody's going to get hacked at some point. You should be protecting yourself by doing things like that.
So we've heard about fraud.
Sure.
And because of the amount of fraud and people impersonating things, that's also led to some additional lawsuits.
It's led to a lot of additional lawsuits, which unfortunately in those situations has caused a trickle effect in the insurance industry, because insurance costs have gone up all across the board. And, and we can talk insurance too, because insurance itself, homeowners insurance in the state of Florida, auto insurance in the state of Florida, we are now the highest auto insurance provider in the country, highest home insurance rates in the country too. And that's because of lawsuits. The state of Florida represents 78% of all lawsuits for insurance in the entire country. So any insurance lawsuit in the entire United States, 78% of them are coming from Florida. And we actually made some, our governor was able to make some headway in December, and he was able to change the rules. I'll say this: none of this happened because of the current leadership. It's not because of our current government. These were laws that were in place that allow these lawsuits to happen for decades. Our current governor actually was able to hopefully close that off. We think in the next year we're going to see progression in lawsuits dropping, and from that, which should mean insurance rates slowly come back down.
So look at you skating to where the puck was going to really get. What I've heard entitled closing real estate transactions, fraud is up, lawsuits are up. It's affecting profitability, staffing, sourcing, and it really it places a problem in the industry. I won't say from credibility, but it does affect trust when money is going to the wrong person, despite the best efforts of the title company. And it's not just start blaming the real estate companies, but at the same point, without these protections in place, this is going to happen. And it bleeds over into every place that we live in and work in. So if we have a real estate transaction that gets interrupted by some fraud and some lawsuits occur, we have this insurance piece. As a byproduct of those things happening, it's affecting insurance and driving them higher. And because those costs, the losses, I guess what I'd say to the insurance company, are ever increasing, what's going on with the insurance companies?
So the insurance underwriters, so most of you go to an insurance brokerage that represents multiple insurance underwriters. And an insurance underwriter is someone that actually is your actual insurance provider. They are going under. And so we've had, unfortunately, in the home insurance space, as an example, over the last 4 years, we started, actually 3 years ago, we had 69 carriers. Today we're down at 29. And the number's only going to get lower and lower for the next 2-3 months. We think we're at the worst it's going to be, but it's just getting tougher. You'll find all insurance costs are going up across all spheres, because insurance, at the end of the day, the concept is pretty simple. You basically have a pool of people that share the losses. And as the losses increase worldwide, you're going to start to see problems. If there was news the other day that California, State Farm pulled out, Allstate pulled out, all major carriers are pulling out of these states. The only reason it even makes a difference to us in Florida is because if rates are going up, if they're experiencing losses there, they're going to take it out in our rates here. Okay.
Well, it's got to come from someplace. So now that we have trouble brewing, and of course we mentioned real estate, title, and insurance, specific to the real estate space, I'm noticing changes in commercial dramatic changes in commercial leasing spaces. What would you say about that?
I will tell you, market conditions, this concept of working remotely has caused what I will tell you a massive issue in commercial real estate. That, along with what just happened in March with the banks in California experiencing some issues. You had three banks go under in a matter of, I want to say it was like 7 days. Well, what basically happened is this affected regional banks. Well, regional banks and commercial real estate go hand in hand. Something ridiculous, like 70+% of all loans for commercial real estate come from regional banks. What happened in March, the failure of those three banks basically has caused an issue with getting more of those loans done, which means less people are able to get financing for those things. Um, Bottom line is that's caused an issue. There's also been supply side issues, too much supply out there. There have been a lot of cities in this country where you've got vacancy rates super high. And if vacancy rates are high, a lot of these people are not being able to perform on those loans. Commercial insurance has gone up as a result, also, just in general, because all insurance has gone up. You've got all these factors weighing in on this, and you're basically you're going to see, I mean, everybody's saying it. Every major player, from Barbara Cochran to every major bank, is warning. I was reading just a few minutes ago. Goldman Sachs came out today. A whole bunch of them came out today again. You're going to see a bloodbath in commercial real estate, in office space specifically, just to be very specific. Now, they always say that. Do I think that's going to happen? And it's going to be very specific by the area you live in, because in some parts of Florida that may not be, that may not affect you. Miami's already got high vacancy rates. You may not have high vacancy rates in Orlando. We don't, but it's going to vary by areas. But either way, you can see the writing on the wall for commercial office real estate space.
It makes sense with the change in the way business has been done in the last 3-4 years. There's less requirement for office space. So the really, really big ones, they've been chopped up into smaller pieces, and these business centers. But when you start to look at even insurance and title and real estate, there's fewer offices in the industry. So it's a natural thing that those vacancies are going to be created. We were this weekend. We were at a place used to be a retail store, and it was a big fun zone with bumper cars and not water slides in this one, but they had the laser tag in this one, and they have all sorts of games and trampolines, and so we're seeing repurposed space. I'm wondering how much of that space gets consumed that was retail space or office space moves into something like that. Any thoughts? What do you think move into these spaces?
Well, two things. A, I think as the economy slows, we've been talking about this forever, coming recession, right? As the economy slows, what I'm starting to see in Orlando, at least, is the labor market is loosening up, meaning there's more people looking for work. As that occurs, my educated guess is you're going to start seeing recessions become self-fulfilling prophecies at some point. I'm spending less because I'm worried about the possible foreclosure. You trickle that down, everybody's spending less. My point is, I think you're going to have labor come back to the market force where the supply demand is going to change. And what's going to happen is employers are going to require people to work from the office more. So I think that's going to rebound a bit, and you're going to start seeing more people come back to the workplace. I think you're going to see repurposed space all day long. I think it's going to be, I know a couple of buildings where, I run a hedge fund in New York City. We were pitched last week office space with 20% occupancy. Bank took it back. They sold it for $900 million, something like 3 years ago. They're asking for $100 million today. So as a hedge fund, we look at that, but we sit there and go, okay, well, what do we do with it? If someone that's an expert in leasing in New York City can't do anything else, what am I going to do with it? But I think some space is definitely going to be repurposed. I think one of the things we were looking at doing, I've been looking at schools in Pittsburgh and cities like that we can repurpose for leasing condos, leasing spaces for people to live in. Because the one thing that is for sure is we're not building enough, right, supply side for people to live in. So I think that's where I see a lot of stuff getting repurposed. I think you're going to see a lot of things converted. It's just going to come down to rules, but I think people are going to be surprised because Europe and Asia have already, from a labor standpoint, post-COVID, have already come back to being in the office again. The U.S. is the only one that has not. I think it comes back. I think, because I don't know your thoughts on it, but I think there's more efficiency gains from being in office for certain roles. Certain roles have always been remote, and they make sense. But being able to actually hold someone accountable in person, I think most business owners realize that there's a value to being in the office in person.
I believe there is just from a business standpoint and getting more things done more effectively is what I would say. So I think you're onto something with that. Yeah. What, Rick? Now you've been in the real estate space for a long time, and I think we can agree that the inventory has been low for a long time. Rates went up, inflation went up, all those things. And of course, we talk about this all the time. The prices haven't softened hardly at all. And this morning we had talked earlier about a piece where the inventory level in January of this year was 70% greater in these markets than it was than last January, 2022. But in May, it's about 15% higher across the board than it was last year. So even though it's more inventory, it's a 55% loss in the bloated, excess, if you will, from the year before. And signals are now pointing that in July we go inventory negative year over year. What does that do, in your opinion, to the market?
I think it makes the market even tougher for that homeowner, that home buyer to try find something. I think it's gonna once again kind of create this bottom floor on prices, meaning prices are only going to stabilize or keep going up because demand and supply are something that work together along with the price index. And so I think all it's going to do to the market, it's going to make whatever's out there that people find a fit more desirable, and it's going to cause more prices to go up for those things. The thing I keep seeing in the market is if a home is priced right, and like you've said before, if it's always priced right, it'll sell. But if it's priced right and doesn't need any work, those are the things we're seeing multiple offers on. The stuff that we're seeing drag are the stuff that needs work done on, and at the end of the day, it's priced wrong. You got consumers or whoever it is doesn't understand what's going on with that particular asset. But I believe as inventories in July get lower and lower and lower, you're only going to have you're only going to have prices go up.
So let's play Mythbuster. Does commercial real estate affect residential real estate?
No, and you're talking about commercial office real estate spaces to be very specific, because we don't think you're going to see any type of issues with the other stuff. Commercial office space getting crushed is not going to affect residential real estate. You don't, where someone's putting an office space doesn't determine the value of someone's home right down the road. They're not gonna intertwine. I can tell you many examples where the two didn't intertwine over the course of 20, 30 years. I mean, you can go back to specific areas where, I tell you what, even in 2010, 11, I'll tell you, office space itself, as the housing market crashed, office space itself didn't do much for a couple of years. I mean, it didn't really crash. It just didn't go down a lot, didn't go up a lot. It just wasn't much in demand, meaning they're not as correlated as people think. That's a simple answer.
It's interesting. We hear, oh, real estate market crashes. So, they leave out the word commercial. They
leave out commercial office space because it's not just all commercial. Commercial office space, commercial real estate space in general is thriving. What happened in COVID, it taught us that we don't want to depend on China anymore. And so you've got a lot more people building things locally. You got a lot more, there's this big movement, or go to Mexico for stuff, but it's caused warehouse space shortages. You name it. You've got this demand for commercial real estate space in general. It's commercial office space specifically that's struggling. And it's struggling, very simply put, because of what happened in March with the loans. And the fact that it's very hard to get a loan for a new one, and the simple fact that at the end of the day, people are not working home for more.
You touched on, and I'll just enter into the banking space right now. What do you think are going to happen to interest rates over the next 3 and 6 months?
Well, I think we're at 7%. We're at 7% roughly. I think that's roughly where we've been at. I think the top's in. I don't envision. First of all, there's a myth out there. A lot of people get confused with what the Fed does versus interest rates, because interest rates follow the 10-year bond. And my belief structure is the Fed's going to do everything it can to trump out inflation. I believe their indicators are delayed, because one of the leading indicators they look at is rent rates. Rent rates have actually started to go down across the country, commercial-wise. In residential, it's basically leveled out. You're not seeing crazy increases. I think at the end of the day, interest rates are going to slowly start heading down. My guess is next year, this time, you're going to be in the fives. And well, the truth is this: we were in the fives this year. We were in the fives 2 months ago. We were at 5.75. I don't want to say less than that, but bottom line is, you can still go out there, Ron, and get an arm. You can get a 5-1 arm at 4.8. We were talking the other day. There's a lot of banks out there that will do, or a lot of lenders out there that will do a refinance on that for free. So they'll give you a 5-1 arm at whatever rate it is right now, and in 5 years refi it for you for free. I don't know how you lose on that.
And I would agree with you. It's interesting to see where the interest rates are today. And talk about high rates. The boom 2001 through 2008 was all at 6 and 7%. There's nothing really changed.
Well, the bottom line is this: is it still cheaper for you to buy or lease? And usually, everything I've read right now is still cheaper for you to buy. You're building your wealth that way, opposed to building someone else's wealth, because that's what you're doing. Don't confuse it. When you're leasing space, and we love everybody leasing because we're all in that world too. But as a consumer, you want to make sure you understand what you're doing. And if you have the opportunity to compare the two, do it. You'll see the math behind it. It's simple. Usually, it makes more sense for you to buy it yourself.
I'm of the belief, use my conspiracy theory for just a moment over here. Interest rates, when rates have spiked like they did last year, in the 4 times that has happened in the last 75 years, within 18 months, the first 3 times it recovered, the interest rate dropped back down to where it was. It may take a little more than 18 months right now. However, to get way, way down there, and I think if you factor in how much artificial manipulation or whatever you want to call it was in there to get the rates in 3s and 4s, 4.5 and 5 was probably a fair rate, but they were manipulated down. Is it that far-fetched that sometime around November, say when we're a year after elections,
First Tuesday in November?
Yeah. Is that a shocking day when rates drop dramatically? But could you see that happening?
I think rates, I wouldn't be shocked by that. I don't think we see in our lifetimes again 3%. I just don't think that happens in our lifetime. And as you would know, that was kind of unusual. 4% is very normal, very healthy. I think 4% and that 5% is where we probably live for a while. I think that's, we're in an era, as they commonly say, of cheap money. And they say that for a reason, because at the end of the day, it was, 2000, 2001. I mean, you want to talk to our parents. Our parents in the 80s, early 80s, were getting loans at 19, 20, 21, 22%. And guess what? They still moved. What you should be looking into, what consumers should be looking into, is assumable mortgages, because there's a lot of options you can do where you can assume someone's mortgage. FHA are required to approve the assumable mortgage. Same thing with VA. If you qualify, you have to still qualify for the loan, and you've got to find a consumer willing to sell. Which, once again, it's still hard, because if you got an interest rate of 3%, why would you sell that? That should be your first rental portfolio property. But at the end of the day, bottom line is there's a lot of creative ways of doing things. And like I said, I believe interest rates will go lower by next year. I think you're at the peaks. Even in this environment, even at 7% on a 30-year fix, you can go find a 5-1 arm for 4%, 4.5, 4.875, something like that nature, or even low 5%. And it still makes sense to buy it and refi it in 5 years for free. There's a ton of lenders that will do it.
It's awesome. So look at number one, a lot of rapid fire, great information right now. I want to wrap up with one thing, and it's not what you think it's going to be, because I think that the forecast of the industry is overrated. We had a personal event a few months ago, and it's changed a few things in the way that you conduct your business. So why don't you share a little bit about that?
Sure. We had, me and my wife were blessed to have our baby. So we 15 years we were we were trying to have a kid. I think we went through about 14 rounds of IVF, and we eventually took our embryo and put it in a surrogate, and we were able to have our baby after 15 years of trying. And it just changes your focus on everything you do, to be totally honest with you. And you kind of guided me through this a lot, to be honest with you. And you know what, your focus in life has changed a little bit. You try make sure you make time for the important things, and all of a sudden it's really only one important thing, and it's making it tell you what, I've known you a long time, and it gives new meaning and understanding to why you do such a good job, in my opinion, of taking time out for Trent, making sure you take time out and make sure you make time for him. And to me, it's become the sole purpose of sole focus of what we do. And at the end of the day, obviously we run our business, we do all that stuff, and that's all great. But there's nothing like getting home and spending time with your little one. And so that it changes. So which we're
Our minutes, our time is non-renewable, and being really effective in how we make those choices for that time aside is super important. And I've noticed, that you've had different time blocks in your calendar to attend to that. So I'll give you a lot of credit for that, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk more about that.
you know what it I tell you what, if I end on anything, it's the importance of time blocking. It's the importance of making sure you take your time out to do whatever you have to do, because time's the one commodity we always talk about. You can't get back, you can't buy it. And it just makes an emphasis for us on making sure we value the time better and we block out what we have to do.
It's really good. Rick, I want to thank you for taking some time today to just give us a whirlwind tour of your insights to all the related financial markets to real estate. And I appreciate you. So thanks for being here.
Always, thank you, sir.